Welcome to the Mechanicsburg Mystery Bookshops Sunday afternoon Zoom. We have Marcia Rosen with us and Claudia Riess, and I'm so looking forward to hearing everything they have to tell us so we can all run out after this and write a really good mystery and get it sold. So just a reminder, the event is being recorded and we'll have it uploaded on our YouTube channel in the very near future. You all know Sarah. Anybody comes in the store knows Sarah. She does that for me. If you do not wish to have your face as part of the video, please turn your video off or place something over your camera. Please keep your mic muted for the duration of this event. When the time comes for questions and answers, please type your questions in the chat box for the authors to review. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go ahead and send questions as you think of them. I just don't know that we're going to answer them before the end.
I lost you.
You lost me?
Okay.
You got it?
I found you again. Okay.
Yay, okay. So what I was saying was that they have a chat box if they want to ask questions and they'll be answered at the end. That doesn't mean they couldn't put a question in now, like while they're thinking about it. But unless you guys want to do it differently, I'm letting it up to you. The questions will be answered at the end. So without further ado, I'm introducing Marcia and Claudia, and thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
You're welcome. We're delighted.
Well, Marcia and I have decided we're going to sort of take turns discussing the issues of what it takes to write a mystery and a mystery series. And in keeping with the idea of an anatomy, just as two different people, two completely different people need certain things, certain rules of life to sustain life. So it goes with writing a mystery. And some of the elements that are essential, first, you need tension, you need pace, things should not idle, it has to move along, the reader must be involved, must feel a presence in the plot and what's going on. The characters, the reader must be able to relate to, either love or hate, just some sense of intention there. And of course, the whodunit factor that leads to a denouement that surprises and satisfies. And first of all, most important perhaps is the hook. Either a dramatic event or a murder, something that draws the reader in immediately. And as you can see, Marcia and I are pretty suited for this kind of presentation because our styles, our perspectives, our subject matter are quite divergent, and yet there are similarities because of these things, issues that we have to stick to. And so what I'm going to do is, since this series is characterized by Level Best Books, an art history mystery series, somewhat of a tongue twister, I usually have an event at the beginning, a prologue that takes place in the past in the art world, not necessarily, but usually, and then how through a butterfly effect, it causes mayhem and chaos and mayhem in the present. So without further ado, I'm going to read the first paragraph of the prologue, and then a paragraph of the following scene, which takes place in the present, where the murder occurs. And the murder should be somewhat at the beginning, close to the beginning. All right. Kingdom of Benin, West Africa, February 21, 1897. The ashes had settled on the ruins and the bodies removed, for the most part, by those indigenous people whose lives had been spared for that very purpose. It sickened Andrew Barrett to have been a witness to the operation and to have said nothing, never mind to accuse, but to question. It would not have diminished the vigor of the onslaught, but it would have formally registered his objection, both to himself and to that ever elusive his devout mother preferred inscrutable God. And so that goes on for a page or two, and Andrew discovers something. He unearths something which later plays a part in the book. And so the murder takes place in the next chapter. It's a Zoom meeting, oddly enough. The looting of African art and artifacts, and the expedition of or the expediting of their return. And it's quite an important topic these days because it's going on right now. The African countries are requesting, demanding their belongings returned that was looted in the during the colonial era, and there's still some reluctance to return everything, although there's been some abating in that area. Okay, so one of the people at the meeting itself, and it can be seen where he is being murdered right on the screen, and he himself sees it, and it starts there. Basically, it's frozen in silence for a moment, and then the silence turned into the Tower of Babel. Witnesses reverting to their native tongues as gloved hands, surely visible from the start, tugged on the cord and disappeared behind Tim's neck to knot or entwine or do whatever was planned or improvised to cut off Tim's air, while Tim clawed at his neck in an attempt to free himself, mouth open in a parody of Monk's The Scream, except in Tim's version, it was a cry for help, mimed to the restless viewers, filling his computer screen, twinkling with their useless babble like Christmas lights. Now to Marcia.
So this is when Claudia and I talked about how we're going to do this, an anatomy of a murder mystery, is knowing that we are writing murder mysteries, but our style is very different. And we both know we've written series, we've also written standalone books. Mine probably are a little more lighthearted. Mine probably fit between a cozy and I'm not sure what else, but something, well, I'll read for just a couple minutes something, the prologue. I always start my murder mysteries with a whodunit. Not very long, but I like the whodunit. But there's also other things for me that are important in writing my murder mysteries and might interest you depending on, those of you who are interested in writing and what you really want to write. The characters are really important to me. Having female characters are very important to me because I like the idea of strong female characters. I also like senior characters because getting to be seniors, I think it's important to show them. Seniors can be adventurous and charming and intelligent and active, but really, that they bring their life experience to doing a lot of interesting and exciting things. But I also like to have some very, what I call, I think, quirky characters. I have Zero the bookie and I have Frankie Socks. And so again, Claudia, like the topic that she's writing about is very serious. And so, she certainly isn't going to need a Zero the bookie.
There are some laughs, there are laughs.
No quirky stuff. We have quirky enough between us as friends and working, as authors in different ways. But also the other thing that I think is so important, I teach a lot of memoir writing classes and other kind of writing classes. And I always try to tell people how really equally important is character, is place, and being able to describe the place and making that an important part of your story and how you describe it. So these are just a couple of the series I've written. I think it's 10 mysteries. One was a standalone. that I wrote with my son, actually, called The Gourmet Gangster. And I wrote a series of short mystery stories, and he wrote the recipes because he said he learned to cook so he could survive. His mother hates to cook. So this is just a very short prologue from Without a Head, which was from Dying to Be Beautiful, the first in the series. And it was Saturday morning at 6 a.m. The head in the sink stared up at her. Darcy Monroe, the owner of a popular chic hair salon, was used to this. Only this time, the head was there without a body. So you can imagine how all the intrigue proceeded from there, and the whodunit proceeded from there. And then this, Dead in That Beach House, this is the third, and I think it's the third in the Senior Sleuth series. And I really like writing the Senior Sleuth series, even though I'm writing a totally new, different kind of series right now. Well, I think it'll be a series. The windows had been sealed shut in a house unused for nearly a century, on land worth a fortune now. The two youths figured out a way to break in, stoned and laughing. Within moments, they were stunned into fear. A century-old skeleton sat on a dark blue found by the police in one of the upstairs bedrooms. How many more dead bodies would be in that beach house? So with that, as I said, Claudia and I had talked about going back and forth, and I think she is going to maybe just talk next a little bit about, how do you keep the ball rolling and with your characters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And interesting, talking about characters. My two protagonists are one is the female, Erica, is a art magazine editor, and now her husband is an art history professor, and their relationship progresses through the series, which is kind of a fun thing. And
it is, yeah.
Now they have a toddler. They started off as a romantic couple. So,
which is one of the things Claudia had said to me, just to jump in, is how important that is when you're writing a series, is that you're helping the characters grow, which is what you did, which was so great. Yeah.
It's fun. But I writing down some remedies to keep the ball rolling, to make a healthy mystery. I've discovered in just by experience, so that there would be no idling. I learned how to delete a bunch of he says, she says in dialogue, which it makes it move much more quickly. And I think if you look at anything that you've written, you can do that. Most of the time, the reader knows who's doing the talking, and it pauses. It's like a catch, a glitch when it's he said, she said, Erica said, he remarked, he replied, thinking of all the verbs you can use. He cried, he screamed.
I told her, she said, yes.
Yeah. So that could, yeah. And also action speaks louder than words, and you could cut out a lot of adverbs. As Stephen King said, I don't want to miss, adverbs pave the road. I knew I'd mess up. I don't tell jokes very well. Adverbs pave the road to hell. For example, he threw the chair across the room. I hate you, he roared angrily. It's that if he's roaring, if he's just thrown a chair across the room, you don't need angrily. He's mad. And you should find the superfluous adverbs and delete it. And another thing is when the protagonist points of view are established, I like to bring in like a short chapter, page or two, where you see things from either the victim's point of view or the perpetrator's point of view, so that you have a feeling for him. Either you grow to like him, to test him more, or you somehow are involved more with that individual. I feel it creates drama. And also, uh, I have discovered that when you're describing a venue of any kind and you're not that familiar with it, even if you are familiar with it, it always makes it more dramatic, and people aren't looking so closely at all the details, the accuracy of the description of the place or the event. If you see it from a person's point of view, from one of the characters' points of view, you can your mind will forgive any errors in details, or you won't focus on them. And in fact, I remember telling Marcia, I had this interesting incident with an editor who said I had described the Paris airport too accurately, because I was familiar with it, and I said, no, actually, I wasn't familiar with it at all. I just told it from someone's point of view, so it seems realer. So, okay, and there's one other thing I'd like to say. If you can't put the murder close to the beginning, in fact, I'm just reading a book that the murder takes place on around page 400, but he has a device to get the juices flowing at the very beginning. If you can't get the murder close to the beginning, then, and you've already written it and it's on the murder takes place on page 80 and things build up to that, you might have a prologue, sort of as I've seen in movies, that extracts some drama from that murder scene, or something that's right before the murder scene, but just as explosive and intense as it, and put that in the prologue.
It's building up towards it. It's causing.
Yeah. So put it in the prologue and then simply start chapter 1 3 weeks before ... And we've all seen that in movies.
Right.
Okay, over to you.
Okay. Doing like this, we did rehearse a little bit, and then we said, no, we'll just figure it out as we go. Well, the thing is, as Claudia was saying, in terms of he said, she said, and I feel so much the same way. I just feel like, there's so many times where what it is. But there are editors that I've worked with that are they're intent on this said, he said, she said, that the whole thing, they told him that, which I think does, it encumbers the book. It takes you away a lot from what, the tension you're wanting to create. So in terms of those of you who are joining us today, and if you're thinking about writing a mystery, or you're in the middle of it, or you just love reading mysteries like we do, there's a lot involved with the editing part. And the thing that I've learned over a period of time, including recently with my new book that was not going to be out until 2023, is it is important to listen to your editor. You do, if you have editors you value, you want to value when they're looking at, the transitions. Are they looking at, especially as important as, your grammar and your sentence structure and your punctuation. But, I had one editor who said, I don't like the whole concept. I said, thank you very much. Goodbye. That wasn't I had a concept I wanted. And that's, not that it didn't need editing help. We all know our skills. Claudia and I both know a woman we've worked with. She has incredible, editing skills, but that's all. I mean, she's not really, I don't think she's a good writer, but she has really good editing skills. So we know. So but it depends, is at some point you want to listen to your editor in terms of certain things. But at another point, I believe you want to listen to your own voice. Is this what you think is right? Is this the way you want it said? Is this how it's supposed to go for you? So, I think, I've recently completed like a revision, and the publisher that I'm working with, a new publisher for my new book, And this publisher, the main thing is this book is the subtitle is Murder at the Zoo. It's the subtitle. Well, and the main character is a woman veterinarian. Well, it turns out this publisher's mother was a veterinarian. So he's got this whole vision of his own, having gone with his mother to, like, I don't know, take care of animals or whatever it is. So we just, have somehow reached a point of agreeing to disagree on certain things. So, which is right. It's always like, so the title of the book is Agatha Raymond, Sherlock and Me. Murder at the Zoo. And the veterinarian has these voices in her head because she grew up listening to and reading all of these books and all these old movies, from the Thin Man to these other characters. So this is the prologue before Claudia, continues on with some of the other suggestions we've talked about. So this is from Hurry Up, Help Me Push the Body Over the Fence. The animals will eat him. It was 3 a.m. and theirs were the only human sounds. I think I'm going to be sick. We'll do that on your own time. I said, hurry up and help me now. The body landed with a thud, and eager animals slowly circled around the very unusual meal. So I'm not sure the zoo in Albuquerque is ever going to let me visit again, but other than that. But the main thing is, in terms of talking about editing, from what Claudia said about the he said and she said, and the too many adverbs, or one of my favorite is every time I have an editor look at it, I can't tell you how many times they add back the word that. He went that way, the word that. You could go through your manuscript and I guarantee you, like Claudia said, get rid of he said, she said, you could get rid of probably 50 the word that, which it just doesn't belong there, right?
I hate to interrupt, but
No.
I have to add to that when you said that. Then is another word.
Right, yeah.
Then is another word, and it's talking about Stephen King. I think he said that if he's reading a book and in the first 3 pages there are X number of thens, he puts the book down.
Yeah.
Just thinks it's pretty amateur,
Right, exactly.
She sat down and then she picked up her book.
Right. So
sat down and picked up a book.
And picked up that book, then picked up that, then picked up that book.
Yes.
And then we're both going to get rid of it. So, I think, there's, Claudia has some more, editor suggestions and things that we talked about in terms of words. Sometimes an editor will say, just get rid of this word, which is what happened with Claudia. But this recent example that I had with this publisher of changing this and doing this and then eliminating this is that I do believe at some point, you have to listen to the voice in your head and your own gut about how you want to write your book.
Yes.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to be a critic of your.
Oh yeah.
And do listen. Sometimes being critical of something, it's sort of echoing in your head, that you were sort of reprimanding yourself for something sort of like that. I just have two examples of when I did take an editor's suggestion. One was the first book that I had written years ago, and I used the word noesis, and it was the characters noesis, but the waves. It was, I had just been majored in philosophy, and I had done my thesis on Sartre. So noesis was a word that I used. He said, I've never heard of that word. I looked it up in the dictionary. I didn't see it. You got to get rid of it. If it comes on page 3, maybe later. And that was my first experience with that. It took me a while. I finally deleted it and used the word fascination. And
I can't tell you how many times we've talked about this word. And it's like, I still don't know what the darn word means.
Well, it's sort of an intention towards something.
Something, right?
And it's sort of, and the connotation is a little different from fascination with. So but fascination was fine. And the other thing that really was helpful, I had an editor read the book, and she said, I think you could get rid of the chapter. Well, it was between chapters that are now 27 and 28 into Kingdom Come, my new book. And she said, I don't think you need that chapter. I think it'll move along more quickly. If you eliminate the chapter, I'm sure you could find things in that chapter that you could put in the one previous and the one after. And it was so easy to do it. I looked over the chapter. I took about 2 sentences from it and put it in the chapter before, a couple of sentences that were key in the chapter afterwards, and it was fine. And I tossed the chapter, and it was, it's
Sometimes,
like
right,
clothes that you
sometimes
don't
it
wear for a
works,
long time. Felt great.
but
Sorry.
sometimes it works, and sometimes we know it's not, it just isn't the right thing, or whatever it is in the way that we're doing it. So, and using our own judgment in it. And, one of the things that I think about is the whole idea of writing a mystery. And we've had lots of different talks about it, Claudia and I, and some of other people that we connect with about writing mysteries. And we belong to, we're involved with, going to different mystery conferences. If you want to write mysteries or you love mystery books, there's wonderful mystery conferences, the Malice Conference, the Left Coast Crime, Right Coast Crime. I like, what is the one in New England, Crime Bake? I don't know. I think it's the right name. I always call it the wrong, but there's a lot of wonderful mystery conferences to go to where you can get great information and hear readers, and even like, if, Deb at Mechanicsburg, if you're going to do a conference, people learn a lot from them. But I have a thing about, in terms of telling your stories, and I've done this in some of the classes that I've taught about, I call it the 4 Ps, about people, plot, place, and purpose. And obviously, in terms of people, it's who are your characters? How important are they? What are their relationships? And Claudia had something about this that we were talking about, was in terms of staying consistent, that your characters, what did your character like in the first book? They better look the same in the 3rd book or the 5th book, unless they gotten real old. So one of the things I do when I'm writing a series is I keep a list of who my characters are, what they look like, what are their characteristics, what are their ages, what is their hair, what are their style, how do they relate to each other, and other characters that are there, and especially my quirky characters. I love to, what am I doing with them, and how are they relating, and why are they important to it? Again, place. As I mentioned, in terms of 4 Ps of a book, and how important place is, and where it takes place, and again, being consistent. When Claudia said about Paris, and I've had people ask me, one of the books took place in New York. That was easy. I lived in New York. But another one took place in Las Vegas. I've been there many times, but I didn't live there. By the way, Las Vegas has a great museum called the Mob Museum, which is really, if you ever go to Vegas, it's just really a great thing to do. And then, of course, there's plot and purpose, and of course, the purpose of any of it. But what is your plot? And one of the things, and I think maybe Claudia could talk to her way of doing plotting, which I think is really important. In every class I've ever taught, or people I just, ask me about writing, is, do you plan ahead? When you're planning a new book, do you outline it? Do you plan it? So any of you who are thinking about it or writing a mystery and wondering, so there's 2 basic things. There are people who plot, and they plot very seriously. They know what the chapters are going to be like. They know a lot of what the book is going to go. There are some people, as long as they know the end, they know where they want to go. For me, what's most important is I do not plan. I know that I'm going to have my whodunit prologue. I know that I have my main characters. I know there's going to be several murders and it's going to be solved at the end. I don't know anything else until I start writing. So my writing is very organic. I think the French word is penser, for thinking as you're going through it. So that's my way of doing it. And if there's not a right way, do it the way it works for you. So once I get into it, I might think, oh, I want to do this. I'll make a note in chapter 7 or 9, and you'll change that as you go on. But there are other people, and Claudia, maybe you could talk to how it is with you in terms of the plotting. But, again, for the fourth thing about purpose is, is there a purpose that you want? And almost like with, the art history, there's a purpose there. I always include something like in Dead in That Beach House, which is in the 3rd series. One of the purposes I had in that was talking about seniors and the abuse of seniors. And there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of abuse. And so I kind of tried to cover some of that. So there was a purpose to this particular book about that. So I try to include that in everyone. But I think, just how do you write a mystery? Like, and I'm not sure. I think Claudia's maybe plots more, but maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think I have a sort of a combined way of approaching things. I do have to write some kind of outline because these things get very complicated, and I have subplots, and there are things going on with the protagonists because their relationship is evolving and a 10 original plot by the characters themselves who just take me there, and that's an organic part of writing. I am sort of somatically involved in the writing itself. I don't sit down with its all mentation, and but I have to be.
Do you feel like the
involved.
characters are talking to you sometime? I mean, I know I do. Do you feel like they're, they're just in your head?
Part of the conversation they're actively involved, I think, as a thing. I yeah, you probably have experienced that kind of thing too. And in reference to your saying, you have to be consistent with physical attributes and so on, and you also have to be consistent with the place. If my characters live in a house in interesting home in Manhattan, and I have to remember what floors various bedrooms and the kitchen and the living room, because I almost made a mistake going into my second book of putting the master bedroom on the wrong floor. Nobody would have noticed, but I would have obsessed about it for a while.
Oh, yes.
if it had gone to print like that. So you have to be consistent. And also there's another element if you're writing a series, you want somehow these books to be standalones. You want to be able to have somebody pick up the book and read it without knowing the background, without knowing how these people met, what mysteries they've solved and so on. But you can so you have to be careful. You can give a hint about, oh, remember that the Cuban caper or something. You don't give anything away that happened in a previous mystery, because somebody might read it out of order from your book 5. They might read book 1 after that. So you have to be very careful with that. And also you have to be careful not to repeat too much of what's gone before, not necessarily giving it away, but sometimes you feel, oh, my reader doesn't know this or that about this character. You just have to relax and go with the flow, and not be too compulsive about giving every detail. You don't have to say the person has green eyes every time you.
No, but I also think sometimes that's where an editor is, comes in and says, you don't need this, or,
Yeah.
you said they had green eyes last time, but this time you.
That's if you have an editor who's doing that, who's
That's-
reading it very carefully.
Right. I do have one editor who is doing that, who's, I just would highly recommend to anybody. She just is so thorough, and she caught, in my new book, it was like, one of the main characters' name is I think it's Jacob. And she said, is his name Jacob or Joseph? You keep switching.
Oh,
Like,
well, I've
let's,
done that.
right, let's keep.
I've done
Right. But it's easy, so it is good, but it's good for you to, of course, reread the book and what you're doing like that. But
Yeah.
I think, what we're talking about are what are the most important parts of writing a mystery series, keeping it successful. Do you feel, I know that as you're progressing, you're like in the fourth one, are your characters
Well, in
getting
the
older? Fifth,
In-
right, I'm sorry, are they getting older? I should know, right?
Yeah, well, yes, that's the thing. By the way, I just have to add one thing to something that was you said before about you moving along organically and you don't know what's going to happen. You know that eventually the mystery
Right.
will be solved. But as I pointed out on other occasions, Agatha Christie apparently thought of when she's writing, she's thinks in her mind of a particular killer who's the guilty party, and then at the end she just switches on herself and almost surprises herself.
Very clever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. What was your question?
I have no idea. How are you? No, it was about, when you're like now working on the fifth in your
Oh,
in
the
your
fifth,
art
yes.
history
Well,
series,
the
do they
sequel.
get older? I mean,
Yes, yes.
how are you feeling?
I know.
handle it?
Because
Yeah.
say in Agatha Christie and I think in your books they're these characters who remain themselves, right? And
Yeah.
they don't
They don't get too much older,
They get-
6 months or
Yes.
so, yeah.
Yeah, but in mine, I don't know why I complicated the issue so much, but I wanted this loving couple at the first book. They were warring for a while, and then this was this burgeoning love developing. So I just had to marry them in the next book, and they had some problems, and by now they have a toddler son. But
You wanted to get them out of their misery, right? Okay.
so yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's different when you're writing, your series, they were a younger couple, especially mine, the senior sleuths. That really was a takeoff on, the Thin Man series. Nick and Nora Charles, who I just adored, those old black and white. So the senior sleuths were, instead of Nick and Nora Charles, they were Dick and Dora Zimmerman, and they were older. And they were bringing life experience. One is a retired judge, one is a retired attorney, and they were bringing their skills and people. They had all these connections and growing children. So instead of like where yours were getting, they're getting married and they start to get older and what their life is about. This couple, and particularly in the senior sleuths, was older. So, I think maybe it depends on what the series is. In the Dying to Be Beautiful, they were younger. So, and of course, I love bringing animals into it as well. So there was a wonderful Irish setter. One was called Agatha, actually, or something like that.
I've got a dog in mind too.
Yeah, so animals are great, by the way, right? I mean, animals are very humanizing and people love that. So,
yes,
but,
and also I think animals and also little children, and in particular vis-a-vis male characters, they do show the character of either the gentleness or the vulnerability of the male character in his relationship with a tot.
So it's interesting. On the same thing in my senior sleuths, for those of you who, depending what kind of characters you're going to write, I had the same thing I wanted to do, except they were an older couple and their sons were growing, and it showed what a really good relationship the father as well as the mother had with the sons, and how nice that is to have, and that, you know, what kind of behavior did the man have in order to create that relationship. So
Yeah.
but what I'm wondering, and I, not to stop changing this, but I know we don't have a whole lot more time, and I didn't know, Deb, how you wanted to handle this about questions or,
I would go, leave about 5 minutes. We have two, well, one question is actually for me. We have 2 questions so far. So I would let about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. But if you, I mean, if this is, if you have a lot more to do, perhaps we could have a second program. So it's
well, we
kind
would be delighted to do a
I
second
thought you
program.
might.
Are you kidding? Wait, you're talking to a couple hams here. It's not a problem.
You know,
We're gonna-
I just, it's interesting. I was just been thinking about this, and it's so obvious that the two of us come from different backgrounds, and it's clear that we've brought our interests into our writing. You know, my brother was an art historian, and from when I was just a tot, I was being taken to museums all over. It was all part of the organic system in my household. And we went to the museum, and then we usually got takeout from a Chinese restaurant. I mean, it's all, and sat around the kitchen table arguing about the various styles that we saw, and it was, and so it was all part of my life. And you have another story.
Oh, yes, mine is very different.
Characters.
My story is different enough that Zero, the bookie, and Frankie, the socks, a version of them were in my life, okay? So, but Claudia's right, you know, our own history and our own life experiences and our own relationships do impact on what we're writing and the story we want to tell. I'm always felt very strong about women's rights and the importance. And so that's why strong women character. And I feel that way about seniors. I feel, as I mentioned, that there's an incredible amount of senior abuse. And I really was hoping to find a way to be able to point that out or to do that. But, you know, I think we do bring our own history. I think one of the things about answering some questions, Deb, is that it opens up that we're really talking about what the people who are attending might really want to hear us talk about.
Okay, well, let's do this. Are you at a good place where you can stop and we can take the
Yes.
rest of the time for questions?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's
Is
do
it right?
that.
Are you okay? Claudia, you okay?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. And then if you've got lots more, we'll just do another class sometime. How about that?
Okay.
All right. Okay, the first one is to everyone. How much do you, Marcia and Claudia, work on character development and growth through the story? Or does character growth actually have a place at the table?
Well, do you want to talk about it, Claudia? Because that's where you're at with your.
Yeah. Yes. Well, my two characters, they each came to their relationship to begin with sort of demons of their own and conflicting demons, and yet they had a strong attraction towards each other. So they've been working through their problems, and or they did basically, are always evolving, and their lives are evolving. And it says my internet connection is unstable. Oh,
I was wondering if it was mine,
the
because
answer-
mine has been unstable from the storm
Oh.
here.
So the answer is yes. Character is very important, as I know it is with Marcia as well.
Yeah, I think my character development is probably different, as is in your series. They're kind of aging. They, you know, created this relationship and so forth. I think, you know, my character development just feels a little different. You know, in the first series, there is this couple that are getting to kind of begin to connect. And the new book, the one, the Murder at the Zoo, the veterinarian and the police detective are, dancing in circles around each other. But her father was a retired gangster. And so at some point, he's just like, couldn't he fall in love with somebody whose, parents were Mormons and not this retired gangster kind of thing. So I think that's important. I think one of the things we're not going to touch on, and if we did another program, was, what you do to write to, interest your audience and where you might go with that. But I do think the character development is just a big thing, and you decide whether you want to do it like Claudia is, where it's expanding and they're, growing like that. I think I probably didn't do it that much in the senior sleuths because they were already in their 60s, so I didn't want them to be that old. But the character development was like one of their sons had met somebody and was interested in getting married and stuff like that. So I think it's,
And how they react to all of
Yes,
this
yeah.
as well, yeah.
so
Okay. Next, this is both good questions. Here's the second one. I have written short stories and shared them with friends and folks in a writer's group. They like my stories, but I am seeking a more professional review. Where do you suggest? How do I go to the next level?
Well,
Okay, you're the teacher. You better.
I'm the teacher. Well,
You're the teacher.
well, it's really too, I feel strongly about lots of pieces of this, Deb. First of all, I think, I learned from years ago, you want to be very thoughtful who you're showing your work to, because sometimes you show it to the wrong person and boy, you get comments that, set you. I showed somebody something years, I don't think I wrote something maybe for years after that. And I learned you got to know, you trust the voice of the person you're going to show. So one would be maybe showing your stuff, having a really good editor. And if Deb gave you my email, I would send you the email of the name of this wonderful editor that I work with. She's reasonable and fair and could really do that. Second is, consider, like we had mentioned, maybe if they're mysteries, think about going to a mystery conference. There's so many contacts and connections there. I don't know if you're in the East Coast. In November, there's the Left Coast Crime. No, is it? No, Left Coast Crime. What is it? Up in New England, Crime Babe is up there. But check out other conferences, and of course, Deb's conference, in August. But you want to, are they short story mysteries? To have an editor look at them, have somebody look at them, who you think you want to go. Published as books, and checking really good. Claudia, you have some thoughts about it?
I mentioned might be go to somebody you trust. I know somebody.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to unmute the people here so they could just sort of shout out things, or no?
Well, I think you have one other question, didn't you?
Oh,
Deb?
All right, there we go. Sorry,
Okay.
everybody. We've been having some storms in the area, so it's
Yeah, here too. So I've been.
it's not helping us in the least. Sorry about that.
That's good.
so can you mute?
I thought there was one more question though.
Okay. Yeah,
I
I
thought
do. let's see now. Yeah, okay. I have a question for you. A little bit based on the last person's question about where you go to the next level. And this is what I don't know. You think I know this after 30 some years in selling mysteries, but I don't know the answer to this. Can an editor also be an agent? And do you recommend getting an agent or trying it on your own after you have an editor look at it, trying to do it on your own? For example, there's a lot of people that are doing short stories, and there are some publishers that really specialize in short stories. So, and I think I'm frozen up here again. So I don't know if you heard me or not.
But you might, the visual voice was.
Right, we could hear you, yes.
Okay, good.
Did you want to start, Claudia, or do you want me to?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, well, I question, Deb, which is why after all these years, it's still up in the air for you. Most editors, it's very rare. I don't see where an editor. So, and finding an agent, it's not that easy. We all know, I mean, people send out query letters and they send information. Anything is possible. And you can take your time and you can try to pitch to an agent. If you have a referral to some from an agent, that would be really great. Back to what Claudia said about protecting yourself. Before you send it out to anyone, to an editor, to an agent, what I recommend that you do is that you just, that you can register the book with the Writers Guild of America. And there's Writers Guild of America East and Writers Guild of America West. And I think, you used to have to do it back and forth by mail. You can do it online. I think it's $25. And you register your book and you register, the title. And I think you send them maybe the first 40, 50 pages. You've got proof that it was yours. So I highly recommend that you do that if you're just, Claudia is now involved with a, reputable publishing company. I am. So that's that for now. But if you're just sending it out to people, like she said, and you don't know, I highly recommend you register it with the Writers Guild of America, protect yourself. So then after that, you can send out queries to publishers. You can send out queries to editors. There's an author guild publishing something, list of all these publishers that you can send work to that you do not have to be send as an agent. But you want to go to McGraw-Hill and you want to go to Harper and you want to go to any of those, you need an agent. And it's not easy to get one of those agents, but anything is possible. So it just depends what way you want to do that. But I've never known an editor who's really an agent. And if they say they
vice
are.
versa.
Pardon?
Or vice versa, an agent.
Yeah, right.
But if you know an agent or an editor that you could just ask the person if they like their suggestions. But I don't know if it's still, first of all, before we go off, Poets and Writers is a great magazine, and in the back of the magazine they have tons of contests and the short stories and poetry and everything you can imagine. So that might be a good idea to take a look at Poets and Writers. And there, I know I've looked in the back of these magazines, and there've been lots of places where I've seen short stories, looking for short stories, poems. And so it's that's an idea. And I don't know if this still pertains, but I remember years ago, somebody told me that if you if you register mail something to yourself, that's also will be a protection for plagiarizing. And I think I did that years ago.
Right.
Because the thing is stamped and sealed, at the closure of the envelope, and it's dated. So if you registered something on today's date, and you see your work appear at a future date, you've got this proof that you wrote this prior to that publication. I don't know if that still works.
I don't know. I just know the Writers Guild is pretty easy way to
Yeah.
do it and pretty reasonable. So,
Yeah.
but what we're both saying to those of you asking is protect yourself. And it's the same thing, whether you're going to an editor or an agent, you want to go to people that you've been referred or, have a good reputation or, and again, we know that there's like, specific publishers that, like Level Best Books is really just doing mysteries. Other publishers will do a variety of fiction and nonfiction. There's all kinds of places you can do all of this research and, from, like Writer's Digest magazine and, other, there's, depending, there's a couple like Gotham University or whatever it is out of Manhattan has some really good classes and good connections to see where you might want to go with it. So I'm assuming most of the people who are participating here, are interested in mysteries. There's, I love this. Sometimes people think, oh, short stories, but there's they're pretty famous writer. His name is George Saunders. You probably know him, although he did write a longer book called December 10th. But he was interviewed a number of years back. And he said every time he starts out, he's writing, he goes, this is going to be a full-length book. And he said, by the time he gets to page 9, he goes, nope, it's a short story. And he's been very successful, hugely successful. So short stories can,
Oh, they're wonderful.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And there's places to send them, Claudia, right? Like Ellerly Queen magazine. Ellerly, I'm thinking of some name there, right?
Elderly Queen.
Thank you.
Ellery Queen. You got Ellery.
Yeah. And the Hitchcock magazine, they accept short stories, mystery stories. So those are perfect for those of you. So that's one of the things that really helps. Just to maybe, I know we're needing to close in on this, but one of the things that really helps if you want to start pitching agents and publishers is either to have had some success, had a platform. Like there are certain, there's a very prominent New York woman attorney. She had been very successful, Linda Fairstein. Yep. She's got a platform to sell her books, to write her books. So if you get a story in these short magazines, mystery magazines, and you're pitching, you're beginning to create a platform that says, I have some success as a history writer. And I think it's an hour and I'm losing my something here, but you're getting the idea.
Well, so, I have to tell you, you guys actually gave some information. I don't think we've ever had anybody tell us before how to protect their book when they're getting ready to send it out. And all the times we've had programs, and most of them are not really aimed at writers, they're really aimed at fans. But I think this is the first time we've actually had somebody address that and what to do. This is
good. Okay.
Very, very helpful.
Good. We're here to serve. Okay.
The other thing I've noticed is short stories, I think, not necessarily always, but I think short stories are a good way to find new authors that write full-length books. Because you might read a short story and go, oh dear, I don't read anything else this person writes. Or you might say, wow, I wonder if they've written anything else. And so I think short stories are very good for that. Let's see okay. I have a message here. I love this, Deb. I wouldn't mind if you invited Marcia and Claudia back for a second.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah, so we will have to do this again.
Okay, we could be like the frickin' frack of mystery writing.
There you go. But I'm so pleased we were able to pull this off this afternoon. We had a few little glitches with the weather. But you know what? It could have been a lot worse. We could have lost it all together, and I'm glad we didn't.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Glad to have met you.
And we do have you too. And we do have Claudia and Marcia's books available on mysterybooksonline.com. Or give us a call. We also take phone calls, 717-795-7470. But most of you have signed into this, so you do have a computer. And so please check out the website for their books.
That's so nice. Thank you.
You're most
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you so much again. And thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon.
Good.
Have a great afternoon, what's left of it.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
guys too have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye.